Welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast. Today we are joined by Mushfiq, who's been on the podcast a couple of times previously, and we're talking about operating websites. Now that might sound like building websites, but it's actually very different. We're bringing Mushfiq on today to talk about what it looks like to bring an operator in to grow and manage your website. So we tackle this from both sides of the coin. First, we look at what it looks like to be an operator for a website. So instead of putting your time and your energy into growing your own websites, you actually sign up to be an operator for someone else's website, which I think is a very interesting concept that not a lot of people end up getting into. But if you have the strategic side of the business nailed down, if you understand what it looks like to build websites, we talk through exactly what it looks like to do that for other websites. Mushfiq has a lot of experience bringing operators on for his projects as someone who buys, grows, and then flips a lot of websites. So he's got a lot to share about who the right person is, what they do, just the nitty-gritty of it. And then we spend the second half of the conversation talking about what it looks like to be an owner of a website and bring an operator on. Again, we hear a lot of stories on this podcast of people who start, grow, and maybe sell or continue to operate their website, but we don't hear as much about people treating it more like a business where they bring someone on to run the site for them. And so Mushfiq goes through exactly what that looks like, who makes a good avatar of an owner, mistakes that he sees owners make all the time, and then he's very honest about who it's not a good idea for, and we kind of go through all of these details. Overall, it's a really interesting interview. Again, we talk so much about growing websites and growing projects online, but this is interesting because you might be on one side of the coin or the other and have a lot to learn here. I hope you enjoy. Before we jump into the podcast, I wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Here's a short clip of Ferry from Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
We got 20 links and placements on massive websites such as The Express, Mirror, Daily Record, and many more with a campaign about the pros and cons of popular diets. Not bad. This is exactly how we've done it. Our client is a very popular fitness client. We have asked them to provide thorough expert commentary about the pros and cons of the most popular diets. Once we have this information, we put this in a nice email and send it out to 15,000, yes, 15,000 journalists from around the world that write about fitness. So good. And unhealthy. Big publications picked up our story from the email, giving our client massive, juicy, saucy, healthy links that are 100% relevant to their website and that will keep the rankings of the website in a great shape. You see what I've done there? I hope this case study inspires and that you will start leveraging expert commentary type campaigns to land links to your or your client's website, just like we've done it with this campaign.
If you want similar link building PR campaigns for your website, head to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them now. All right, welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman, and today we have a repeat guest, Mushfiq, joining us. Mushfiq, welcome back.
Thanks, Jared. Thank you for having me. It's great to be back.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. I was going through my typical rundown here with you before we started recording, and you're like, I got this. I've been here a bunch. And I'm like, oh, yeah, good point. Probably don't need to go through all the house cleaning details.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it has been a couple years, and you've had some very popular episodes in the past. I know that after one of the ones that you did with Spencer, I kind of reached out to you and actually hired you to help me out with something. And that's where we first got to know each other. And then I was able to interview you a year or two later. Why don't you give people a background, though? It's been a little while since you were on. Tell us a little bit more about what you do, who you are, and then we have a fun. I'm so excited about today's topic.
Sure. Yes, I'm Mushfiq. I run the website Flip, which is a newsletter blog about buying, growing, and selling content sites. So I've been buying sites since 2008. I think about 220 exits, flips to date. A lot of them are, six figures. And so that's how I kind of built my name, just somebody who understands how to buy something, quickly grow it, and then quickly exit it. and I teach that, and I showcase that. My newsletter has deal flow where I share websites for sale, and that's some way I've kind of made a name in the industry. But anyways, from day one, I'm a niche site operator, but the twist is that I buy to flip, not to always keep long term. So that's the short story.
Yeah, your interview with Spencer a lot of your website flips was really good, especially the parts about like the easy wins. I know you have some stuff about easy wins, but that's a good, worthwhile listen for everyone, and probably a good like maybe set the stage for today. You know, we're going to be talking about websites, niche sites specifically from an operating standpoint.
Yep.
And this covers two sides of the coin. Like you have a lot of people out there who have websites that are large enough that it might make sense for them to not operate anymore from a couple of reasons. Maybe a business reason, maybe because they're actually not necessarily the best qualified for it. But then you also have a lot of people out there who are working a full-time day job and are pretty good at building websites, but don't have enough hours in the day to build their own projects yet and might make good operators. So it's a conversation we haven't had yet. And why don't you set the stage for us a bit, and then we'll kind of dive in. Like you're pretty involved in that world of hiring operators and seeing what it takes. Like what do you think would be a good stage setter for our conversation today?
I think what is a website operator, right? And everybody who has built up a niche site is in a way a operator, but that doesn't mean you are a good operator, right? Beginners kind of learn through the process and gain that experience. Now, a proper website operator is somebody who has done this many, 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 many times. In my company, we have a rule: you have to have 10 websites that you have grown and held on or flipped to be called a website operator. It's just experience, right? And so a website operator is essentially somebody who can take a site from zero all the way up to a target. That could be traffic target. Usually it's a revenue target. Traffic is useless, in my opinion. It's revenue that matters. And then that's a successful project. And that involves everything from content management to on-page SEO, off-page SEO, revenue generation, finding opportunities, affiliate or display ads, everything, right? And so that's what a website operator in the basic terms does. And then, we can expand on that or go to the whatever you want to talk about.
It's perfect. I mean, it's a great transition into it, because a lot of people will kind of start with, well, what are the metrics that matter? You're saying that revenue matters the most, traffic doesn't. Maybe go into that a little bit more. Why? I mean, I tend to agree with you as a business owner, but I think a lot of people, when they're building websites, the number one thing we think is keywords and traffic, keywords and traffic, keywords and traffic.
Yeah, honestly, I've never been on that boat. There's a lot of information out there, and it's not wrong. Target low competition keywords, generate traffic easily. I think I've always been on the fact that target keywords that bring you the maximum revenue, rather than target a lot of keywords that just paste on display ads and make pennies on the dollar. It is pennies on the dollar compared to what potential there is, right? And I'm seeing this more and more now with our portfolio and people coming to us. They have thousands of articles, right? Because somebody said, just publish. But what you get is content debt, right? This is a term that I've heard, and I'm just repeating it. Essentially, you build up all this content, and that's great. You're getting it published, and you're getting that initial traffic boost, and then a year down the road, somebody else is beating you. Your content is now decaying in the SERPs. Now you have to go back and update all of that, right? That's the biggest challenge, is keeping a website up to date, and people lose interest. They don't want to do that because it takes a lot more effort to update content than it does to just publish. So that's what I'm seeing now, and that's a lot of reasons why sites are getting hit, is that they have all this outdated content, or other content is more fresh in Google's eyes, and they're just losing out, right? And then now they have 1,000 articles. What are you going to do with those? And that concept was publish a lot of content so you can get a lot of traffic, so that you can paste display ads. I go other ways, right? I have websites that have 500 page views a month, making more than a site that has 100,000 page views. And there's just a different ways to approach it, right? So, and it's much easier for me to keep that site updated because it only has maybe 30 articles, right? So it's different ways.
You would probably know best because, and I'm trying to put it from the flipping standpoint, right? Which is when you go look at a listing on Empire Flippers or, Effie or Flippa or any of these, like they don't really lead with the traffic. They lead with how much it's making per month. And it doesn't really matter how many pages it has.
No.
It's about how much it's making per month. Maybe walk us through a deal that you would bring an operator on so that people can get an idea for what that would look like. And just from a high level, share some of the details about how an operator earns money, and then also, what they might, from a high level, be responsible for.
Yeah, good. So obviously, ideally, I bring an operator on into one of my sites that I own when it's generating enough revenue. I mean, that's the ideal case, right? Let's say it's making $5,000 a month. That's justified to bring somebody on full-time, or they're just working on that site, not full-time per se, but focused on that site. And so that's one justification. But I have other sites in the portfolio that we manage where I see potential. I know that if execution happens in the way, this site will earn money in the future, and therefore I can hire very early because I don't have time, right? And there's a lot of cases like that where there's potential, or it's a very long-term project and just slowly put in hours to grow that site out. So there's two cases. Now, one is you're self-funding the project out of your own cash because it's not making money, and that's not, some people can't do that, right? Most people can't do that. And then the other is the website's generating revenue and you're paying the operator from that situation. Those two edge cases, and then obviously there's anything in between those.
With being someone who can operate a website, let's say they're qualified, what are the responsibilities for them? I mean, is it literally like you have to do everything, or do you work with a team? I mean, kind of outline some of the details.
So the way we do it, right? I have an agency that does website operations, right? So I hire on top tier operators, and top tier in my book is somebody who has their own portfolio of niche sites. They have potentially exited a site, so they know the A to Z. Most of my operators have sold sites, and they know the whole life cycle of a content site. That includes everything from content production to on-page SEO to finding revenue opportunities to turning on display ads. I mean, basic stuff, to doing everything that's technical on a site, right? They are assigned, so they're the lead on that site, and under them they have VA, one dedicated virtual assistant, and I call them essentially like a sub operator. Essentially, what they do is essentially format posts, publish, do the kind of the repetitive things, which the main operator can guide, right? So obviously the operator is getting paid hourly on a good rate that's competitive, because again, look, these people who can operate sites, they can just do it themselves. There's no reason why they need to be doing the job. So if they're always doing the trade-off, should I spend my time building my own sites, or should I work for somebody else at an hourly rate? If the hourly rate has to be justified where it makes sense, right? And then the sub operators, the virtual assistants, they get the typical rates that you pay. So yeah, that's a two-tier structure. That's all you really need. I know some people like to have more hierarchy, more spread out, but I like to have one person focused on a site, because what I've seen is, even with niche site owners like myself, right, managing more than 5 sites, that's what I've said in the past, more than 5 sites, you get distracted. And this is like kind of full time, right? 5 sites, and you've 10, 15 sites, you get distracted. You always focus on the really good winners. And so similar structure with the operators, they manage 3 to 5 sites max, and that's where I see as a sweet spot. And then we just hire more operators.
A lot of the big time sucks in the website are content creation, link building. Are these things most operators you see doing themselves, or is that something where they might carve out a portion of their budget for it?
So maybe we should. I think the second question you asked is how are these operators paid, right? Because let me just touch on that. So they are paid an hourly rate. That's the structure that I have seen. Incentives, bonuses, those things are good to have where they hit certain milestones and they get a bonus. So hourly rate and then incentive and bonus structure is fine. I don't give a percentage of the site's revenue or anything like that. I say, hey, if you can get this to 5,000, let's say it's earning 5,000. If you can get this to 7,500, you get $1,000 bonus or something, whatever, right? That kind of a structure. That's enough motivational factor. So that's the monetization part. The salary part. And then now how are the most time consuming things is content production, of course, building outlines, figuring out keywords, outsourcing that. So we don't have, the way we operate, we don't have an in-house writing team. We outsource to whoever gets the best content, whoever can produce the best content in that niche. And so, yeah, they're handling that process. That's actually 60 to 70% of the time is spent on updating old content and adding new content. The rest is just focusing around internal links to building backlinks. Again, we're using third parties for that. But building backlinks is actually much easier because if you're using a third party agency, you say, I need a few backlinks. These are my metrics on these internal pages with this anchor text. And, you can just handle that. It's a one-time thing, whereas content production is continuously getting content. Some weeks we get 10 articles, some weeks we get 2. So it's kind of up and down.
It sounds a lot like being a really good strategist and project manager.
Yeah.
It sounds like I'm not the one who's writing articles all day. I'm not the expert in the specific niche that this website is in necessarily, but I'm an expert at growing a website. And so I can work with a content agency or a content team. I can work with a link builder or a link building team. I can work with a VA who works underneath me. And I've got to make sure that all this kind of comes together and we hit our KPIs. Is that kind of the avatar of a good operator?
Yes, 100%. Now, the way I do it is, I'm obviously, let's say, 15 years in this industry, right? So like elite operator, right? You and I, we've done this for a long time. We don't necessarily have the time to get into the nitty gritty. And that's why I hire the operator, where I am the chief strategist, right? I say, all right, this website needs X, Y, Z, as in these 20 pages need to be CRO'd because they have the highest easy win opportunities. Check out this silo category. It looks like a good topic to target. And essentially lay out the very, very high level. And that operator, if they're good, they can take those 3 or 4 bullet points and run with it, right? Mm-hmm. They'll figure out what to do. And obviously there's question and answer time. But essentially that's the hierarchical breakdown where I'm giving them high level, they're executing. And then if they need help from the VAs, they can use them at free will.
Is there ever a situation where an operator might identify something and say, hey, we've got a really good opportunity here. Can we get some more resources? Yeah. Strategically speaking, like, hey, I see an opportunity here. Maybe we just won in a big update, or maybe, we're just getting this exponential growth rate. Like, how do you work with an operator in that capacity?
Yeah, look, that's the ideal situation, right? I mean, that means that operator knows what they're doing. They're finding maybe like a set of keywords that look good, and they're asking for budget. Now, if they justify the budget, they're going to get the budget, right? And my job, because we have clients, so I didn't even mention this. Like, we run a web operator agency, right? So we'd have client sites, we have my own sites, right? If it's a client site we're managing, then my job as a salesperson is to translate what the operator is saying, like, hey, we have all these keywords and there's all this opportunity, and translate to that a business value to the client and say, I need X $1,000 for content production and this, so we can target this topic or do this task. And most say yes, because if you can translate that to a revenue value in the future, it works out.
Yeah. Let's see. So question I had is we kind of talked about the avatar of who this is in terms of they're good at project management, they're good at strategy. I mean, I think the obvious question which you alluded to is if I know how to build my own sites, I have track record, I have this success, maybe I've exited a few, I have to ask, why would I want to go be an operator rather than go work on my own project?
Yeah, 100%. You don't. There is no reason to hire an operator if you do it yourself, and that's the case for most people, right? So what we are seeing with operators is people who got into the online business space as just an one type of investment they're doing, right? And they're using their own money or they raised money, they bought a few sites. Now they have no interest in being operators themselves or doing this full time, right? They're investors, and so those people definitely need a third party to help them. And then there's people who are like me who have always built up sites, grown them, and now maybe they have other projects or they want to do another site, right? And they don't want this one to die, right? So what do you do in that situation? You can hire VAs to kind of handle that process individually, and that's a lot of people do, right? They become from solo operators to quasi operators, where they are kind of that operator level, but they have 5 or 6 VAs doing a lot of these subtasks. But over time, you realize this takes a lot of time. Even delegating takes time. Once you get all the SOPs in place, maybe it reduces the time, but a lot of VAs are talented, but they don't have that full holistic knowledge of what to do. They need guidance. So again, that takes time. So those people can say, okay, I don't have time for this. This site makes enough money. Let me hire a dedicated team where I get reports and I give high-level guidance that, hey, I want the site to go this direction. I want this. And they just execute, which is, me executing my team, and they're happy with that, right? And they're paying us a management fee.
Who wants to operate? Who wants to be an operator of a site when they have that experience level to build their own? It's always the question of like, why does a business owner go back and take a day job? But it's worth asking. It makes sense why somebody would want to hire an operator. Why would somebody want to go be an operator?
Yeah, excellent question. And from the high level, it may not make sense, right? If somebody knows what they're doing, they can do it themselves. Now, most of my operators are talented. They've done this themselves, and the ones that I'm working with, I can pay them an hourly rate where it makes sense. So most of these guys are overseas, but very talented people, right? I'm paying them an hourly rate where they might not make that at any day job or anywhere, but they have, let's say, 5 sites 3 or 4 sites they own on their own, that they're not working really full time on anyways, and they probably have VAs. They're probably operating those as with VAs, and then now they have 20 hours a week, right? They can launch another site, but nowadays things are tougher, right? It takes a lot more effort, a lot more time, a lot more money to start a site the proper way. And so like, okay, maybe I can just earn an hourly wage that I cannot earn otherwise, and supplement my income. So yes, it depends on where you're getting your operator from. It depends on their incentives. It's not easy to find an operator, right? I have a very, very strong network because I built up a newsletter and just a following in this space. So I'm able to attract people like this who are excellent operators and who want a part-time job. It's not easy for somebody who is not well known in the space to kind of search for an operator, because there's a lot of people who will say I'm an operator, but really they're at they don't have that holistic thought process, and they're really just a VA, right? So that's the difference.
I think you bring up a really good point from a risk mitigation standpoint, and also from just a challenge of growing a website these days. Like, you can kind of wave your flag in the air and say, hey, I know how to build websites, but that doesn't mean that at my current stage of life, I'm up for the all-in approach that it might necessitate. But that doesn't mean I can't use my skill sets to help, someone else or another brand, especially if, like you said, you have you already own a site or two of your own,
Right.
from a risk mitigation standpoint, it's like, okay, I could just keep starting sites and then my risk factor goes up because they would call it over leverage, perhaps would be the right term. But if
Yeah.
you're getting an hourly rate doing something you're an expert at and building your own
Yeah.
as something you're an expert at, you're kind of not as over leveraged, right?
Yeah, yeah. And look, a lot of these people, operators, they are gaining experience, right? You have tunnel vision when you work on your own sites, but when you work with a team with random types of sites, right, e-commerce to content sites, whatever, and doing SEO, you learn a lot doing that, and it's diverse. And then you can apply that to your own content sites. So operators get paid to learn, and then can apply that to their own websites to 10x.
I will 100% agree with that. Running an agency, I'm shocked over the years at all this stuff I've become a quasi-expert in, just because it's like, all right, well, we've got an African safari company that just signed on. And 6 months later, you're like, I know more about the time of days you can go out on an African safari and you can't than I ever thought I would.
Right.
So, okay, final question on the operator side, and that would speak to the audience that, and I'll throw my own ring in the hat here. I have my own opinions about this from just a conversational standpoint, but I'm curious from an operator standpoint. Like, I think a couple years ago, maybe, I'm just guessing, like a couple years ago, like it wasn't uncommon that if you put your head down and you grew your site right, I'm using air quotes here, and you didn't take shortcuts, that your site would typically just kind of go up. And there'd be different periods of it going up, but it was rare to get hit by a Google update unless you were doing stuff that was, air quotes, wrong. I would say in the last couple years, it's a lot more common for sites to go up and sites to go down, for people to build websites that go up and go down. And obviously the successful ones, their sites go up more than they go down. And over time, they go up. So what if I'm someone who, I have experience at this. I have a flip or two in my past. I'm growing a site, but I've had some drops over the years. Is that bad? Or is that something that you guys don't mind, that people that want to hire operators don't mind as much?
So let me rephrase that. Do you mean the operators that have failed? Or is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. If you haven't seen updates, you're not an operator. You're not somebody I'm hiring. So when I hire, I don't ask about the successes. Obviously, if I'm talking to you, I know your background. I know who you are. We've been in touch before. I'm not hiring random people. I know you've had successes. And honestly, of all the operators I've hired, I've actually bought sites from these people. So I contact people I've actually transacted with before, so I know what they've done in the past. I ask them mostly, which sites were hit? Why were they hit? And did you do anything about it to fix it? And sometimes the answer there is, no, I use bad practices to do that. I learned from that. I'm not going to do that again. I discarded that site and moved on to the next part. That's not a bad answer. Sometimes, when Google was giving a lot, you could target keywords like can dogs eat XYZ and just rank within a month. Obviously, you should take advantage of that and build sites for that and monetize it. It may not work today, and that's completely okay. That's the experimental phase where with an operator I'm looking for, they're learning through the process and becoming a better operator.
Yeah. Hey, just a quick break. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. Just a quick reminder that today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Now, I've got a short clip from Ferry with Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
What a crazy campaign. How to Sleep on Your Back. This campaign got us links in Huffington Post, Glamour magazine, Mirror, and lots of other great news publications. Let me show you how we've done it. It was so simple. Our sleep client provided us with expert commentary about how to train yourself to fall asleep on your back. They also gave advice on why it's best to sleep on your back. Once we've had this information, we went to Muckrack and searched for journalists that consistently write about sleep and well-being. We've sent these journalists the advice provided by the client, and within 1 day the links started flowing in. Glamour magazine, a DR81 website, picked it up. Huffington Post, DR88, Mirror UK, DR90. A massive avalanche of links blasted to our client's website with this simple yet effective campaign about how to sleep on your back. I hope this inspires, and I hope you'll use this technique to land massive links to your or your client's website.
Like what you just heard and are looking for similar link building PR campaigns for your website? Just go to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them today. It's good to hear. We've all had, well, I guess I won't speak for everyone, but I feel like almost everybody listening, we've all had our share of lumps and successes, especially over the last couple of years, as you know, the game has changed. And this isn't a conversation about that, but it's hard not to talk about it in some capacity these days. Okay. Let's move on to the flip side of the coin. And I want to, if I can be a little more focused about it, I think that it makes sense, the person who doesn't build websites, hiring an operator. And that's not our audience here. Like everybody listening builds side hustles to some capacity and has a little bit. So let's assume we understand that. That's kind of like buying a piece of property in another state and you hire a property management company, and that concept kind of makes sense. Let's discard that, not because it's not worthwhile, but just because for our audience, like talk to the person who, maybe let's outline actually who should think about getting an operator, and what are the different avatars or use cases where somebody might want to think about it. Somebody who's operating their own website right now or a collection of websites.
Yeah, no, good question. So obviously, first, right, you don't have time, you hire somebody. That's common, right? And it takes an expert to know when they don't have time, right? Like I know based on my track record that when this site, I know which sites I won't have time for, which I don't. And that's a skill, right? So if that individual on your audience knows, okay, I have 5 sites doing well, I want to start a 6th one. Okay, what do I got to do? They know their capacities. A lot of people don't. They over leverage and then they get screwed. So that's one, right? The other is what we're seeing today is sites need to be brands, right? This is nothing new, but people are saying build a niche brand, right? I'm seeing a lot of that now. That should have been the case 5 years ago too, right? Anyways, build a brand. So some of the people we're working with now is they want to divvy up the responsibilities. Where building a brand is hard, right? That means doing a lot of PR, doing YouTube, doing social media. We don't do any of that, right? So we divvy up the responsibilities where they say, hey, Mushfiq, please manage all the SEO aspects, content production, all of that, website stuff. I want to build a brand, so I'm going to go out and do a lot of this other out-of-the-box tactics. So you're splitting the responsibilities, and now they're freeing up their time where they can go and do YouTube, they can go do Twitter, they can do all the stuff that I won't do, but they can do because they want to build a brand in this space. So divvying up the responsibilities, which is hard to do. Let me see if I can find any other situations. I think that's it, right? So you have to, so for anybody in the audience, you have to know your weaknesses, right? If your weakness is, say your strength is video production, you have sites, but your strength is not SEO, you've kind of figured that out. You have to be honest with yourself, figure that out. That's when it makes sense to outsource those things and focus on others. You don't have time. That's the one I already said. So I think those kind of things, it makes sense. Now, look, if you're doing this full-time, or part-time, you have 5 sites, you putting all your effort into it and it's working, you don't need an operator. You don't need to have this conversation, right? It's not for everybody, 100%.
I mean, it makes sense. The time argument makes sense. The expertise argument makes sense. Maybe look at your most successful use, maybe it's yourself, your most successful use cases, but others you've seen. What works the best in an operator-owner relationship? Is it an owner that's kind of involved and bringing some of their experience to the table, but sometimes that can extend over into micromanagement or, too many cooks in the kitchen, whatever analogy you want to give. Like, I'm just trying to think, if I got to the point where I wanted to hire an operator on, like, how strategic should I remain?
It's best if you step aside as the owner. If now in that second situation where I said, if it's very clear, right, the owner is very clear that they want to do all the extra stuff, that doesn't coincide with what we're doing, right? 100% do it. It just helps me, right? Helps our case. Go ahead. But then there's, we've had a few clients come to us and say, Mushfiq, I want to hire you guys. You guys do everything, but let me know what I can do to expedite the process, right? And they keep saying this, let me know what I can do. I can outsource even more content. And we say, look, please don't. We're the experts. We know what to do. We'll handle all the SEO aspects. When an owner gets very involved, they can screw up the process. They can delay the process, which is even worse, right? So we have some people say, I need to review each article that you guys produce, right? Look, if we're producing 20, 30, 40 articles a month, it takes an extra 48 hours for that person to get back on each article. We're not hitting our targets. And then they come back and say, why aren't we hitting our targets? So no, if you're going to outsource to an operator, you're handing over that site, you should never log in, realistically.
I can completely understand where you're coming from, having been a business owner for 20 years. Like, that's one of the most difficult things to get to where you understand. And how does someone who's built a brand or who's built a website up, how do you have any recommendations for how to get over that hurdle? Because that's a big hurdle, especially if this is somewhat of a personal brand, which I'll get into next, by the way. That's the next question on my list. But how do you get into that mindset? Because that's a very difficult thing to truly, let go of to some degree.
Yeah, no, 100%. Look, it's a personal thing. I also think if you're not able to give up control, it could be one, semi-personal, but also the person you're talking to that you want to hire, you don't trust them, right? So luckily, when I get on a sales call, people know me, know my background. There's a lot of information out there. So when people contact me, they know they can trust me because I've done this so many times, right? Now, if you're talking to some random person who says they can manage their site, they say they're an SEO manager, well, it's hard. It's hard to build that trust where you're handing over the keys to your, your asset. So I think for people who want to hire an operator, find somebody trustworthy, understand their background, get case studies, get successes and failure case studies. Look, failure is important. If every single thing they share is a success, that's a problem because your site is going to get hit for an update. It's either going to be today or it's going to be next year. It's going to get hit, and you want somebody who knows how to do their best to recover. Not all sites will recover, but put together a game plan that, hey, look, this is what happened. We'll try our best to fix this. Let's see what happens. So if you only see successes, that's a problem. So I think trust building is very important for that owner to understand this person is the right person for the job. And then the other aspect is, okay, are you personally ready to let it go? If you're not ready to let it go or even go into this process, you shouldn't waste anyone's time, right? Look, I have, for example, my site, the website flip.com, right? That's my baby. I manage that myself. I don't think I can ever give an operator full keys to that. It is what it is. That's my personal brand. Probably a good segue. If that's, yeah.
Perfect segue. I was going to tell a story as a segue about how, this was many years ago, 3-4 years ago, I hired someone to build hero links for me. Yeah. And for 201 Creative, my agency, but, in my name. And it's not a horror story or anything, but I remember they sent over, one of the links they had built, and I clicked on it and I read my quote. And it was the exact opposite of how I felt about the situation. Yeah. And it was about some business topic or something. Right. And I remember being like, ooh, we all know that the SEO side of us knows probably nobody will really read that, or if they do, it won't have this big,
right.
negative impact on me. And it wasn't a bad thing. It just wasn't my personal opinion, but it's a good segue to, I've got a personal brand. Okay. So let's say I've gotten my food blog to $30,000 a month, and I'm tired of being the person who has to write the recipe, crank the photos out. This idea of getting an operator sounds really good, so I can maybe go on to something else or take a break or just focus on some new thing. Maybe I want to add video, and like you said, but it's my name on it. It's got my face on every single recipe that comes out. And I could think about this for a whole lot of niches. I don't know, how does somebody like that, adding the personal element, look to bring on an operator?
Excellent question. I'll give you a story. So we've had food bloggers, recipe bloggers, mommy bloggers reach out, and they have their face everywhere, right? And the first thing I tell them is, look, I want to be upfront and clear with you right now. We taking over means we will never, ever hit the quality levels that you have hit on your site. It's just not possible. You're cooking your own food and building it's just not going to happen, right? We are doing this to increase the traffic and get you more money. The quality will never be the same. And I'll be honest, most just walk away right there because, again, it's their personal brand. They've built it up, right? So we have not closed, and we personally don't want to close anybody that has their face all over and they're like a food site or something like that, because we just can't do it, right? Even if we close and manage that site, I know 1 month later they're going to start complaining that, hey, Mushfiq, this article is, from an SEO perspective and content perspective, well researched, but it just doesn't have my tone. It just doesn't have my voice in it, and so that's the issue right there. So I don't have a straightforward answer for that, right? I don't think it's possible to just hand over the keys to something like that to an operator. I haven't had a success case.
What do you think? What do you think could be the situation? Because there are people, and I've talked to these people before, and I not because I want the project, but like they're at a point for whatever reason, whether it's a life circumstance, whether it's burnout, whether it's other opportunities, where they're like, honestly, like the quality that they're going to be able to put into it going forward isn't enough either. So what do you think? How does someone navigate that if they're at a position where they kind of need to they either need to sell it, they need to bring someone on who's gonna carry it forward, because the days of just parking a site and expecting it to continue growing are done and dusted. So how would you, if you're stuck and you need to consider this as an option, like what do you think some tips are for these kinds of people?
So let me break down the options this person has, right? Let it sit, probably going to die. Probably for a year it'll be fine and then it will die. So they need to understand that. Second is sell it. But personal brands, they don't really sell. They're really tied. So no buyer is going to want that because the face is on it and it's their brand. So your exit probably will be very weak on a multiple basis. So that's not always the best. So really your only option there is to suck it up, let go, and outsource it either to VAs or to an operation agency. Really, you only have three choices. So in a situation where what you kind of painted out is this person doesn't have any more time, right, to handle it. So look, those are the three options, and I, some people who come to me, they I've had one person come to me who has three very, very large sites in this space, in the food space, right? And I don't think they just kind of thought, hey, look, Mushfiq has this whole thing where I don't have to work, right? And I can just give it to him and he will do everything. But after speaking to them, I don't think they realize that, okay, Mushfiq is a SEO agency type structure. He is not a branding agency, right? He is not going to mimic the full brand and continue that process. And they walked away because in reality, they didn't have any life circumstances. They just wanted to save time and then maybe launch another site. And so you have to, as an owner, figure out why you're doing it. The why cannot, if you're a personal brand, the why cannot be I want to leverage my time for something else and still care for that site,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
you gotta let go of the care. It's just the reality of it.
You can also go EMIS on it, right? Like you can work to unwind yourself slowly from the business through processes, and then maybe down the road a year or two later. This happened to me. I ended up selling my first company, Bauman Photographers, but my name's on it, and it's because I was an integral part of the company. And it's odd because I ended up selling it even with my name on it, but I had unwound myself from the business to where they weren't buying something that involved me anymore.
Right.
But that took years. I realized I needed to make a change, or I wanted to make a change, but I couldn't sell at that moment because I had to unwind myself over the next couple of years from all the processes, the day-to-day. Yeah. And I had to let go of being involved in everything.
Yeah. Just to add, one thing that can be done, a structure that we haven't tested, but is possible. The challenge with, you run an agency, I run an agency, it's bottlenecks, right? Owners being bottlenecks. Like, it sucks. So, sit down with an owner and say, don't be a bottleneck. Let me produce content. Let me do everything. Publish it. right? After it's published, you are welcome to go into those articles, add your own images, add your own flavor, your own quotes, whatever you want to do. You do it after we are done. You can get our approval, but that doesn't stop us
Yeah.
from continuing, right? That's a kind of like once a week you can send us, hey Mushfiq, I want to do these little changes, and it takes me 5 minutes to go over this. Hey, these all look good. I want to add a video. Do it, right? Do it, but don't do it blocking our
Right.
on production. So that's something that's highly possible and doable. But again, the owner needs to understand that yes, for a week, a month, the lower quality article might be published. Your followers might see it, and you will update it later. But there's a huge amount of people that are coming to your site looking for fresh content. They're gonna read the lower quality. There's nothing you can do about that.
Yep. That's a great point, though. It does give someone an opportunity to say, okay, well, I don't want to do the day-to-day anymore, but maybe one Saturday a month, I'm going to, sit down and crank out a bunch of recipes and do some videos and go back and add my personal touches. So, and again, we're focusing on the it was just an analogy, like the food blog, but this applies to so many, like I can think of like, anything you're a personal, a personal finance website, a travel website, a DIY website. I can think of so many niches where this would apply to. So, hey, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about like the finance side of this and the number side, but especially on the owner side. Like, let's say I'm sold, I'm interested in thinking about it. How do I work with the finances? Like, let's say my website, I don't know, let's just pick a nice random number, makes maybe in the low end. Well, I don't want to say low end, but it feels like $10,000 might be a nice like spot to maybe you could consider it. If my website's making $10,000 a month, how do the finances of this kind of work out when you want to look to bring on an operator and the hourly, you still got to pay for the content, you still got to do the links. Like there's a lot to now compute.
Yeah. So how we do it is we don't take over any of the revenue streams. You collect that as the owner. We don't take over the domain or anything. We just need WordPress access. So logistically, it's very simple. And the finance side of it, so you collect the money, you pay us a management consulting fee, right? It's a monthly fee. It ranges depending on complexity. And then we make it clear up front that you need to supply a growth budget. That's for content mostly and potentially backlinks if needed. And that can range from X to Y depending on what we're seeing, right? And they pay the fee monthly, but the growth budget is essentially revolving. And I say, okay, over a 3-month period, I need X $1,000 for ABC. And I will collect it when the time is right. So it's not like we take it up front and just hold on to it. We just say, okay, Joe, we need the money next week because of this. We're ready to do this. Can you invoice? Can I send you an invoice, right? So that's it. And that's how simple it is. That's the finance side of it, I guess.
That is, yeah. And so for a typical owner, and I'm sure it ranges, but just to give people like a mindset around it, like what % of their expenditure every month typically is for an operator or an agency operator like you versus a growth budget of backlinks and content?
Yeah. So our base plan is $1,500 a month for management fee. And usually that requires a growth budget. We've seen $3,000 to $5,000 over a 3-month period. That seems to be the base site, and that works out well.
3 to 5K per month, or 3 to 5K over
total.
Okay.
Sorry.
Wow, that is far more approachable than I thought you were going to say.
Yeah. No, and then look, and that's the base, right?
Yeah.
So if I see an opportunity like all these keywords, right, and I see 50 keywords, that obviously is a bonus, and I have to talk to the client, and if they want to go through it, that's a separate conversation. But before we even sign on, I just set the expectation to expect $3,000 to $5,000 for a growth budget over a 3-month period, and some months might be $1,000, some might be $2,000, but less than $5K.
Yeah. What is the maybe give us what you think an avatar of a successful owner looks like? We talked about the successful operator and what their avatar looks like. They're good at project management. They're good at strategy. What does this successful owner look like? And I can't imagine it's just walk away. I'm sure that's nice because they stay out of your way. But like, can they bring any more attributes to the table that makes them even more successful in your experience?
Yeah, good question. Okay, walk away. That's one. 2.
Yeah, get out of the way. Let us do our work.
Number one, be open to letting somebody manage the property, right? The asset. That's probably number one. Two is decrease your expectations on quality. Let's be honest. I don't care about your site. It's reality. And any agency can lie about this. I care less about your asset than you personally would. It's the reality. It is what it is. I'm not gonna lie about that. I do my best, but come on, right? So that's one. So quality will decrease. So be okay with that. Now you can push back and say improve the quality a little bit here. We can do little changes like that. That's 100% okay. So that number one is walking away. Number two is have an expectation on quality. Number three is, I think this is not for beginners, right? If you have one site, all right, if you're self-funded, you have a lot of money from other activities, and you want to enter this niche site space. We have a few people who are like that, they're wealthy on their own, and they want to try this as an asset class, but they don't want to manage their site. They're doing it like real estate, where they buy property and then have somebody else. That's a different story. They understand what we're doing. They have no problem. Those are the best clients, right? Let's be honest. And then there's the people who are beginners that bought one site, and they kind of think my agency as the golden ticket, right? Oh, I gave it to Mushfiq. He's gonna 10x it. I'm gonna be rich, right? I set expectations with those people and say this is not easy. If that was the case, I mean, let's be honest, I wouldn't have an agency, right? Just do this myself. It's not that easy, right? It takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. So somebody who has had a life cycle of going through this process, either building up a site and knows all the intricacies that are involved and appreciates somebody else taking that over and understands that, okay, it's very involved. My life circumstances might have changed. I'm having a baby or something, and I know what is involved, and I know personally it's hours and hours, so I can have an agency kind of manage that process until I'm ready to take it over again, right? Somebody who understands, and that process you won't understand unless you've been through this a few times. You've built a few sites, you've exited a few sites, you've failed, right? And those are the best clients because they know. It's not a golden ticket. It takes effort, and so I'm hiring somebody to do that. Hopefully that's a good persona.
It's great. That's great. And as we kind of start to wrap up here, like the thing I'm hearing on a very high level on both sides of the coin is diversification. If you're like a good operator is someone who understands how to build a site, but is understanding that diversification in their lives is a good idea at that point for whatever reason. And then on the ownership side, somebody who wants to bring an operator on is somebody who understands the idea of diversifying where their time, their energy, their money, their resources goes. And again, that's from a very high level. And it's interesting because I think, as Google makes it harder and harder for niche site owners and just website owners and brand owners in general to continuously see gains of traffic year over year, like diversification is a very kind of popular topic, right? Like people are thinking about this now more than ever. Like you can win growing websites and building websites, and like there's just so many good case studies, but it's a little bit more volatile and it's a little bit more fickle. And you also can win by growing your own, but man, what about using that expertise to diversify where your income stream is? So I didn't expect that coming into the interview today. So I feel like I really learned something new from a high level on that.
Awesome. Yeah, diversification, right? I mean, look, there's a lot of ways to diversify in the space. I've been diversifying, right? My wife and I bought an e-commerce brand and doing SEO on that, right? It doesn't always need to be content sites. Content sites is a gateway. Into the online digital marketing world. It's the easiest way to get started, in my opinion, but you learn all the skills that's needed to be successful in the space, right? Everything. And so you can take that and level up, right? Level up to e-commerce, right? You can, let's say you want to hire an agency. You have an idea, right? Let's say you have a domain, you have an idea for a brand, right? Outsource it to an agency to do the SEO, operation agency. then you go focus on product development to launch your own e-com product, right? So then on the side, somebody's working on that SEO, getting that traffic up, getting that authority up, and you're on the side spending a year building a product, and then when they fuse together, boom, right? You have automatic traffic, and then boom, you have a product, right? That's brand building, right? That's ways you can leverage an operation agency to build something out. And if you want to do that yourself, that's double the work, right? So yeah, diversification is key. Newsletters, brand, everything. I have one client where we're handling the SEO, they're handling the newsletter, right? There's a lot of ways to structure this where it makes sense, where you're still involved as the owner, as the brand, but you're not doing the day-to-day.
Yeah. And with the helpful content update, kind of reinforcing the idea, as you mentioned earlier, that brand is more important. Like, you can't just produce content in the form of blog posts all day anymore and expect to win long term. You might survive this update, but long term, Google wants to see brands ranking. And man, it's a lot of work to build a brand all by yourself.
It's a lot of work. For sure.
Well, maybe we'll close on that. Hey, how can people learn more about you? And obviously, you do represent operators for websites. So maybe share more how people can get in touch with you there.
Yeah, on social media, I'm active on Twitter at the website flip. Thewebsiteflip.com is my personal brand. But if you're looking for operational help, that's WEB operators.com. I launched that like 6 months ago, and we're growing fast, and we manage any sites. Reach out, we'll figure it out.
Mushfiq, number 3 or 4 in the books here. I mean, we gotta just you're in rarefied air there. There's not many people have been on that many times.
Right.
I appreciate you coming by, and this was really enlightening, and hopefully it's been good for people on both sides of the coin. If you're sitting in a spot where you fit the avatar of an operator, of someone who can come in and help websites grow, probably pretty enlightening. And then obviously on the flip side, if you're someone who is at a point where it could make sense to diversify your time and your energy and your money by hiring an operator, hopefully this was enlightening. So thanks again for stopping by. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jared. Thank you.
Today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Here's a short clip of Ferry from Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
This campaign got us big links in websites such as Lifehacker, Wales Online, Daily Record, and about 20 other news websites. Let me show you how we've done it. We knew that people will be flying a lot this summer, and we knew that journalists will be writing about this topic a lot. So, on behalf of our client, we put together a nice guide about how to fall asleep on the plane. Then we use Muckrack to find journalists who write about travel. Then we put our advice in a nice email and send the tips to the journalists. Within just a few days, the links started landing, securing our client natural placements in really big websites, just like this, and this. This is a great example about how you can leverage seasonal trends to earn links to a website. Anticipate what journalists want to write about at all times and give them the stories that they need. They will reward you with some great, juicy links. I hope this is helpful.
Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. Just a final reminder that it was brought to you by Search Intelligence. And if you're looking for link building PR campaigns for your website, just head over to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them today. Cheers.